Junichi is a virgin loser who was forced to embarrass himself by asking out the most gorgeous baddie in school. However, his whole world flips upside down when she surprisingly says yes. Now he will be forced to date a crazy baddie who takes pure joy in teasing him to his absolute limits. On the first day of a new semester, Junichi was walking around school when he discovered that Cupid had been working overtime except for him. When he got to class, he met his loser friends in a depressed state because, just like him, they were also single and being suffocated by all the lovey-dovey couples around. Just then, his neighbor, a watermelon brand ambassador named Nina, called to him from the door to give him the lunch pack he forgot at home. As soon as she was out of sight, his three incel-brained friends rushed to his side. When they asked him to introduce them to Nene, he was surprised to see that Nene was their type, but the idiots argued that she ought to be everyone's type. Just then, he was called by a black-haired beauty named Kashi, who told him she was glad they were in the same class again. Her words left Junichi blushing like crazy, so he struggled to form proper sentences while they talked. When she finally walked away, Shinpei slid up behind Junichi and said it was a shame that Kashi was plotless, even though she was a beauty, which made him realize why they were single. As if that wasn't bad enough, these idiots pulled out adult magazines and began reading. He asked them to put the magazines away, pointing out that their classmates were giving them judgmental looks, but they refused. When he tried to complain again, Shinpei offered him his magazine, trying to convince him to embrace his culturedness in public. Unable to resist the temptation, Junichi took the magazine, but was startled into dropping it when a gal named Yukina suddenly walked up behind him, and, with a disgusted look, told him to keep his filth at home next time. After she left, Junichi remained frozen in place, as the girl had scared the wits out of him. Later during their break, Shinpei, Kaigo, and Minoru talked about how Yukana was a 10 out of 10 gal, and how they wished they were the ones she looked down on. When Shinpei suggested that one of them shoot their shot at her, Junichi reminded him that they were first-rate losers who would never stand a chance. Shinpei and Keigo argued that they would because gals were known to give it up easily and didn't mind who they did it with. Being the delusional idiot that he was, Junichi began imagining doing adult stuff with Yukana. However, before he could dirty his pants, he heard Shinpei mention his name. It turned out that they had chosen him to ask Yukana out, and when he tried to refuse, Shinpei had Minoru restrain him, while he sent Keigo to drop off a letter in Yukana's locker. Hours later, Yukana found the letter in her locker, and after reading it, she told her friend Ranko to go home without her. She then went to the meeting point, shocking Junichi, who had been so sure that she would be a no-show. When Yukina asked why he wanted to see her, he went directly on his knees and begged her to be his girlfriend. But all Yukana did was to give him a look of disgust before saying he was wasting her time. Hearing this, Junichi became convinced that he would be the talk of the school the following day. Just as he accepted his fate, he caught a glimpse of her plot covers peeking out from under her skirt, and saw the reason why he should give his all in the confession. When Yukina asked him to get up, he vehemently refused, so she let him be and asked what he'd asked her out. Junichi didn't know how to answer the question because his reasons were purely unholy, but after thinking for a while, he gave her a dumb answer. Yukina told him to cut the crap and said she knew he was looking for a way to swipe his V card, which surprised him. But Junichi had mentally clocked out as he was sure that he would now be labeled the school's virgin degenerate. Just as she told him to get up, he caught another glimpse of her plot covers and refused, saying that his pride as a man wouldn't let him raise his head, but she called Cap, accusing him of being there to look at her plot covers. Yukina then crouched to his level and encouraged him to take a better look at her goods.
Let him cook!
However, when he tried, he discovered that her hand was blocking his view, and Yukina started mocking him for falling for her trick. Tired of the teasing, Junichi attempted to leave, but Yukina pulled him back, and after trapping him against the wall, she told him she would be his girlfriend.
I did it. He did it.
He did it.
That night, as he lay in bed, he wondered if Yukina had always had a bad taste in men, because it made no sense that she had agreed to date a loser like him. His actions led to Junichi having a very detailed, moist dream about Yukina, but just as they were about to cross the Milky Way, he fell out of bed. Sleep-deprived, Junichi dragged himself to school, and since he was lost in thought, he panicked when Shinpei tapped his shoulder. When he calmed down, the boys apologized for forcing him to ask Yukina out and asked him to tell them how it went. Junichi revealed that after everything that had happened, he was sure Yukina had put him on her hit list, so as it stood, his life was ruined. They then sympathized with him and assured him that no matter what happened, they would stand by him because losers only had each other. Junichi felt hopeful after hearing this, but everything changed when he suddenly got a very suggestive photo from Yukina. Up until then, he'd forgotten that he exchanged contacts with her, and when he tried to explain this to his friends, they acted like they didn't know him. As they began walking away, Junichi pleaded with them to listen, so Shinpei asked if he'd kissed Yukina the day before, to which he answered no. Hearing this, Shinpei grabbed him by the shoulders and told him that kissing was a gal's second nature. This got Junichi hyped up, so Shinpei advised him to invite Yukina to a karaoke place, claiming that it would set the stage for the kiss to happen. When friends questioned the logic, Shinpei explained to the pea-minded idiots that going to a karaoke place was simply an excuse to be alone in a room with a girl. He told them, about something called the Karaoke 3IX rule, which had only 3 rules. Pick a naughty song, sing a duet, and then take off some clothes. He swore that if Junichi followed the 3 rules accordingly, he was guaranteed to hit a home run. Just talking about it got Shinpei excited, and after he dramatically lost a few pints of blood, he begged Junichi not to disappoint the Virgin Brotherhood. Later on at school, as Junichi tried to figure out how to invite Yukina out, Kashi called out to him, asking if he was okay. He assured her that he was, but the girl wasn't convinced, and kept pushing him to confide in her. The next moment, a cheerful Yukina grabbed Junichi's arm, unconsciously pressing her plots against it, and the idiot nearly crossed over. Yukina excitedly asked if he'd gotten her morning selfie, telling him it didn't have any filters. As they talked, their classmates observed them, wondering what in the messed up timeline was going on. When Yukina noticed their stares, she happily announced that she and Junichi were dating, surprising everyone. Hours later, the final bell rang, and Junichi still hadn't had a chance to invite Yukina to karaoke because everyone kept asking her about their relationship. As he tried to figure out what to do, he noticed his homeboys trying to sneak away, so he called out to them. However, they pretended not to hear him and rushed off, forcing him to chase after them. When he eventually caught up with them, they told him that he had no business rolling with them since he now had a girlfriend. Shinpei even admitted he was jealous, and when Junichi reminded him that he had caused everything, he turned and walked away with the others. As Junichi watched them leave, Yukina came to him, and to his surprise, she invited him to spend the afternoon with her. On their way out, they ran into Nene, who was surprised to see them holding hands, so Yukina explained that they were dating. Hearing this made tears well up in Nene's eyes, so she called Junichi names and then ran off. Curious, Yukina asked Junichi if Nene was his younger sister, and he answered that she was just someone he thought of as his younger sister. When she began dragging him away again, Junichi asked where they were going, and she told him it was to a place where he could be loud and feel good.
What do you mean by that?
The way she said it made him think she meant a love hotel, but to his surprise, they ended up at a karaoke place.
Yeah, boy.
It turned out that he was a replacement for her friends, but he didn't seem to mind when she smiled at him. Later in their karaoke room, Junichi struggled to sit still, as all the things Shinpei told him were floating around in his head. To make things worse, he noticed a sign posted that asked customers not to use the room for anything other than singing. At that point, he couldn't help but wonder if Shinpei had been telling the truth about karaoke rooms. Just as an image of debauchery flashed in his mind, Yukina walked in with their drinks, causing him to panic. He tried calming himself down, but Yukina made it impossible when she almost shoved her plots in his face while trying to get to her seat. Once she was seated, his panic rose when he noticed there was hardly any space between them. He eventually began imagining her giving him a lap dance. However, he never got to see what happened next, because Yukina's singing voice brought him back to reality. Watching her sing and have fun made him realize he was overthinking the situation, so he decided he would be a chill guy. When Yukina's set finished, she asked if he didn't want to sing, and he told her to sing another song, because he hadn't made a choice yet. When she began singing again, Shinpei's 3 rules came to his mind, and he realized the first one had been completed. After she finished singing, she returned to her seat and selected a song for Junichi since he didn't know what to pick, and she insisted that they sing it together, which he happily did. It wasn't until they finished singing that it dawned on him that they had just completed the second karaoke 3x rule. At that point, he wondered if Yukina was aware of these rules and was actively following them. Since the universe enjoyed messing with him, Yukina suddenly complained about the heat and took off her sweater, effectively completing the 3rd rule. Due to this, Junichi made up his mind to kiss Yukina. Still, before he could do it, she pointed out that he had hair sticking out of his nose. Overcome with embarrassment, Junichi pulled away from her, so Yukina excused herself to go to the bathroom. However, once she got out of the room, she took a moment to calm herself. It turned out that she'd also been nervous about the kiss and didn't want him to know. A little while later, the couple left the karaoke place, but Junichi fell to his knees and cursed out his nose hair for embarrassing him. Yukina laughed at his theatrics and told him that she'd enjoyed their time together, which made him happy. As they began walking away, none of them noticed that Ranko was watching them. The following day at school, Junichi found a letter in his locker and wondered if he was finally experiencing a canon school event. After looking around to ensure no one was there, he opened the letter, but was shocked when he suddenly heard a voice behind him. Turning around, he saw Keigo and Shinpei, tears running down their faces as they cursed their lack of luck with the ladies. Minoru was the only one who wasn't bothered, so they ignored him and demanded that Junichi give them the letter. Junichi refused, saying that since the sender didn't put their name, it might be a prank. Shinpei told him not to be stupid and pointed out that the girl was probably too shy, which was why she didn't write her name. They then encouraged him to see the sender, but Junichi said he couldn't because he was already dating Yukina. Hearing this, Shinpei said he was ashamed to see that it took less than a week for Junichi to become a simp. He also noted that Yukina would be disappointed if Junichi didn't show up at the meeting place. The next moment, a mental image of Yukina cursing him out came to his mind, and he started panicking. Seeing that he'd gotten into his head, Shinopi egged Junichi on, telling him that the right thing to do was to see the mystery girl. His actions confused Keigo, so when the boy pointed out that his sudden switch was soothed, Shinpei pulled him aside to explain his reason. He said that since Junichi was getting more attention from the ladies, they might get the chance to mingle with them as well. Immediately, Keigo began dancing to his tune and joined him, encouraging Junichi to see the girl. Junichi told them he would, but made it very clear that he was only going because he didn't want the girl to feel bad about him. After school, Junichi went to the meeting place and was shocked to discover that the mystery girl was Ranko. As he cowered before her intimidating presence, she took one whiff of his loser cologne and said it wasn't enough to mask his virgin aura. Shocked by her spot-on deduction, Junichi stood watching her like an idiot, and when his heart began to race, she picked up on it and decided to tease him. As she rubbed her natural pillows against his chest, she told him he was naughty for getting excited over a girl who wasn't his girlfriend. She then whispered in his ear, promising that she could show him a good time, and that was when Junichi's legs started working again. He tried backing away from her, but ended up tripping, so Ranko took advantage of the situation to straddle him. Not surprisingly, he was helpless against her, and he just lay there as she began playing with him until he heard Yukana's voice calling his name. When he turned around and saw her standing there, he was sure that she would pop off on him. However, to his surprise, she smiled and jokingly told Ranko to get herself a man if she was desperate to get her itch scratched. In response, Ranko laughed and apologized, after which Yukina helped her off Junichi's crotch. Yukina then formally introduced Ranko to Junichi, telling him that she was their senior by a year, and Ranko made a silly joke about how Yukina's plots made her look older. Yukina told her to knock it off and said she should have come to her since she was curious about Junichi instead of harassing the poor guy. Ranko argued that her introduction method was more fun, and then began teasing Yukina by massaging her plots. As Junichi watched them, he couldn't help but be mesmerized. However, the illusion was broken when Yukina suddenly pulled away and asked Junichi to take her home. When they walked away, Ranko's smile morphed into a frown, and she swore to separate the two. That night, Yukina texted Junichi to suggest they go somewhere with Ranko when he was less busy, and he got excited. However, when that day came, he felt like the third wheel because Ranko kept stealing Yukina's attention from him. On their way to the mall later, they passed Neni on the road but didn't notice because they were busy talking. On the other hand, seeing Junichi with two girls convinced Neni that the boy was on his way to becoming a harem lord, so she started crying. When they arrived at the mall, they went into a clothing store, and when Yukina asked for Junichi's opinion on two shirts, the cultured idiot started daydreaming again. Eventually, he came back to his senses and picked one of the shirts, but Ranko said the second one was a better choice. They then went to another store, and this time the girls tried on the outfits they had chosen. As soon as Junichi laid eyes on them, he struggled to take his eyes off Yukina's plots, causing her to scold him. He tried to defend himself, but the evidence was stacked against him, so Yukina continued chewing him out. Their little lover's quarrel annoyed Ranko so much, but all she could do was glare at Junichi. Later, as they exited the mall, two guys approached them to ask for directions. However, they quickly switched it up and requested Yukina to accompany them instead. Seeing how uncomfortable Yukina was with the situation, Junichi stepped in and told the guys to back off his girl. In response, one of the guys shoved Junichi to the ground, and when Yukina rushed to his side, the other one told her to stop wasting her time on a pathetic weakling. Having seen enough of their annoying alpha male act, Ranko spoke up, saying she was game if they wanted to have fun, so they left with her. A few moments later, she returned alone, causing Junichi to ask if both guys had been two pump chumps. Ranko explained that they had left after she had a nice chat with them, but the truth was that she beat them into unconsciousness. Later that day, after partying with the girls, Junichi walked home feeling very useless since he'd been unable to defend Yukina from those guys properly. And when he got to his place, he was surprised to find Ranko waiting for him. When he asked what she was doing there, she told him she had developed a crush on him after seeing how he tried to defend Yukina. Before he could properly digest her words, she pulled him inside the house. There, they sat next to each other on the sofa, but Junichi was far from relaxed, as he didn't know how to act around the daring woman. Suddenly, she straddled him and tried to get him all excited, but Junichi did a good job resisting her. When she realized what was happening, she pushed him to lie down and doubled her efforts. However, he still refused to give in, and after he managed to push her off, he told her that the only person he'd clap was Yukina. The next moment, Ranko angrily pushed him to the floor, explaining that she wouldn't let someone like him touch Yukina. As she continued ranting, she made a statement which led Junichi to believe that she was secretly in love with Yukina. Suddenly, the sliding door was opened by Yukina, who screamed at Ranko to stop harassing Junichi. She then revealed that she'd followed Ranko because she noticed she was acting strange and had come inside when she heard screaming. Ranko became worried, thinking that Yukina had listened to the things she said, while Junichi tried to clear his name by putting all the blame on Ranko. When it became clear that Yukina hadn't heard any of the things she said, Ranko got off Junichi and told her friend that she'd only been testing him. She was so convincing that Yukina truly believed that she hadn't just tried to sleep with her man, and thanked her for being a good friend. When she mentioned how much she loved her, Ranko suddenly recalled a moment from the past when a younger Yukina had given her a flower at the playground. Back in the present, she started crying and begging Yukina to forgive her, so Yukina patted her head to comfort her. The following day, as Junichi walked to school, Ranko ambushed him and threatened to cut off his balls if he ever told Yukina the truth about how she felt. For some reason, he found her behavior cute, and when she noticed he was smiling, she began beating him up. Unknown to them, they were being observed by Kashi, who was pissed that Junichi liked someone other than her. It turned out that this girl was two-faced and believed that everyone ought to worship the ground she walked on. She also regarded Junichi as a dog meant to be loyal only to her. That night, Junichi searched the internet for every piece of information he could find about gals, wanting to better understand Yukina. He watched several gal videos, but only one stood out to him, and he couldn't resist leaving a comment. The following day, when Kashi got to class, her classmates greeted her and she smiled. However, she secretly talked down to them in her head. After taking her seat, she happened to overhear Junichi and his friends greeting each other and decided to listen in on their conversation. Shinpei told Junichi that Keigo had been obsessing over a streamer girl he had stumbled upon the night before, and Keigo argued that his obsession was valid. To prove it, he pulled up one of the girl's videos and showed it to them, and Junichi immediately recognized her. She was Boa, the girl whose live stream he'd gotten hooked on the night before, but he chose to feign ignorance. On the other hand, Shinpei declared that she was a goddess, and as he and Keigo gushed over her, Junichi told them to chill out. Suddenly, Shinpei got serious and told his friends that Boa looked familiar, but his rusty brain couldn't remember where he'd seen her before. When he finally gave up, Kashi also called it quits on eavesdropping on them. Later during lunch, Junichi sat outside with Yukina and was so nervous that he barely heard most of the things she said. At some point, he started imagining her feeding him from her bento, but knew that would never happen thanks to Ranko, who was also there. For some reason, Ranko could sense that his imagination was working overtime, so she teased him about it and started talking to Yukina. As he watched them, Junichi told himself that the tan goddess was still planning something again, but he couldn't prove it. Suddenly, she hit him with a sinister grin, confirming his suspicion, but he couldn't do anything about it. The next moment, Kashi showed up and, after apologizing for interrupting them, told Junichi she needed to borrow him for a while. Before Junichi could respond, Ranko spoke up, asking Kashi to leave, as her presence was making her sandwich taste bad. Kashi immediately apologized for the inconvenience and then turned to go, but Junichi stopped her. Kashi assured him that it was all right and said she would talk to him later, after which she finally walked away. As soon as she was gone, a very ticked-off Ranko asked Junichi what his relationship with Kashi was, and he swore there was nothing. Of course, she didn't believe him and told herself that Kashi was hiding something beneath all that good girl lifestyle. After school, Yukina said goodbye to Junichi, and after she left with her friends, Kashi suddenly appeared. Once he got over the jump scare, she asked if he could help her with the task their teacher had given her. Unable to resist her charm, Junichi agreed, and Kashi felt proud of herself. Despite saying the task was given to her by a teacher, Kashi took Junik to a cafe. When he questioned their presence there, she pretended not to hear him and told him to order something. While she was making her order, Junichi wondered if she had brought him there because she wanted to be a rebel for a day. He also couldn't help but hear Shinpei's voice in his head, talking about how quiet girls were the most freaky. He then imagined her coming to sit next to him and trying to play with him, but he quickly returned to reality. After their orders came, Kashi asked Junichi if he was really in a relationship with Yukina, and he confirmed that he was. His response wasn't what she'd hoped for, but she kept smiling and acted like she wasn't pissed. That night, Shinpei watched Boa's live stream, hoping to find clues about her identity. He listened attentively as she complained about a guy whom she referred to as her servant, and how he was giving another girl attention. As he kept watching, he finally got what he was looking for and printed out the evidence. The next day at school, when Junichi walked in, Yukina tried to call out to him, but Kashi quickly rushed to his side. She spoke to him like she usually did, but this time she got all touchy-feely with him, causing Yukina to get jealous. Being the dumb idiot that he was, Junichi didn't notice anything strange about her behavior, so he responded to her like always. Meanwhile, Shinpei, feeling like 007, secretly filmed the interaction from outside the classroom. After school that day, he called Keigo and Minoru to the back of the school and revealed that Kashi was the red-haired streamer. Aside from showing them her pictures side by side, he also played a recording of her complaining bitterly about her servant and his 3 dumb friends. It didn't take the boys long to realize she was talking about them and Junichi. Suddenly, Ranko appeared out of nowhere and demanded that Shinpei tell her more about what he'd discovered. At that time in class, Yukina tried to talk to Junichi, but when she saw Kashi standing with him again, she left with her friends. On the other hand, the clueless idiot asked Kashi again if she needed help with the teacher's errand, and she told him no. She then grabbed his hand, which surprised him, and began pulling him along with her to a place she claimed was more private. That place turned out to be the rooftop, and since she was determined to keep surprising him, she suddenly confessed that she liked him. She also asked him to break up with Yukina and date her, but Junichi said he couldn't because he was really into Yukina. His rejection caused her to reveal her true self, and she told him that he was nothing more than a dog. However, she didn't stop there as began ranting about how he belonged to her and had no right to be giving his attention to another girl. Junichi just stood there, shocked, as he watched the crazy chick spew all that crap. When she finally stopped talking like an entitled brat, she showed him a video she'd secretly recorded at the cafe the previous day. When she mentioned that she would show it to Yukina, Junichi begged her not to, so she promised to delete it if he dated her instead. Junichi instantly became conflicted because he realized that whatever decision he made wouldn't favor Yukina. Fortunately, he was saved from making one by the sudden arrival of Ranko and the Looser Squad, but Kashi demanded that they leave. Of course, her request was ignored, and when Ranko got close enough to her, she whispered something to her, making her realize that she knew her secret. Shocked, Kashi demanded to know how she found out, and Ranko told her that she had her ways. Not wanting to be exposed, Kashi swore vengeance against Ranko, and then gave Junichi the memory card containing the video. When she walked past the guys, Shinpei assured her that her secret was safe with them, so she left. Confused, Junichi asked Ranko what she'd told Kashi to get her to go, but she told him it was a secret. Just then, Yukina arrived, so Junichi left with her, and as they walked, she asked him if he'd been with Kashi. Junichi assured her that nothing had happened between him and Kashi, and Yukina said she was aware, which made him happy. A few days later, Junichi dreamed of Yukina, and when he reached for her melons, he woke up to discover he was actually holding one. However, it didn't belong to Yukina but to a red-haired loli, whom he didn't recognize as Nene. Confused, he asked who she was and demanded to know how she got into his room. Nene tried to answer, but for some reason, everything she said sounded like gibberish, so he asked what her deal was. Surprised that he still couldn't recognize her, Nene pulled the blinds open in hopes of jogging his memory, but he remained clueless. Frustrated, she pulled her phone out of her chesticles and began scrolling through it, as if the position they were in wasn't awkward. When he pointed this out, she spoke some more gibberish, which made his head hurt. Realizing he wasn't understanding her, Nene got off him and began wondering what was lacking about her gal speech. In the end, she went back to speaking normally, and when she revealed who she was, he was shocked, as he hadn't expected to see such a transformation. On their way to school later, she clung to Junichi so much that his arm fit perfectly between her melons. Feeling uncomfortable, Junichi asked her to let go, but she refused, saying they always held hands when they were younger. Junichi pointed out that things were different and said that people would get the wrong idea about them, but she still refused to let go. Just then, Shinpei and the others appeared behind them, and for the first time, Minoru reacted to seeing a girl. This creep assumed she was young, and since he liked his wine fresh, he was prepared to risk it all. However, when Nene reintroduced herself to them, he lost interest. Meanwhile, Shinpei got all up in Junichi's face to demand an explanation as to why every girl within a 10-mile radius was trying to taste his pickle. Just as he admitted his jealousy, Keigo joined them and told Junichi to share some of his riz with them. In response, Junichi told them to back off and clarified that nothing was going on between him and Nene. The girl backed him up verbally, but her actions said otherwise, leaving Shinpei and Kago with their jaws on the ground. When they couldn't handle the teasing anymore, they ran off to prevent their drills from going off. Minoru then bid Junichi and Nene goodbye before casually walking after his friends, since he didn't see the need to hurry. Later, after Junichi arrived at school and was swapping his shoes, Kashi approached him. As usual, she put on her fake smile and politely asked him not to say anything to anyone about the incident on the rooftop. Junichi swore he would take the secret to his grave, so she grabbed his hand to express her gratitude. However, since she was also a creep, she quickly picked up Nini's scent on him and started actively sniffing him. Her actions weirded Junichi out, so he stepped back just as Neni returned to ask him a question. As soon as Kashi saw her, she deduced that the scent she had smelled on Junichi was hers, and became curious. On the other hand, Nene was acting all clingy with Junichi, and when she noticed Kashi glaring at her, she asked who the surfboard was. Before Junichi could respond, Nene moved closer to Kashi and said something which pissed the girl off even more. Junichi tried to stop her, but Nene ignored him and kept unintentionally roasting Kashi, whose clapback never happened because her friend called her. As Kashi rushed off, she purposely stepped on Junichi's foot, causing him to wonder how anything that happened was his fault. Later in the day, Yukina approached Junichi, who looked like he could drop dead at any second. After confirming that he was highly stressed, she invited him to go somewhere that weekend to relax. From the other side of the classroom, Shinpei and the others watched Junichi and Yukina with envy. According to Shinpei, the plot gods were being unfair to them, and Keigo couldn't agree more. However, Minoru couldn't care less about Junichi's sudden popularity with the ladies, and told his friends to relax. He then pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket, which he revealed was a map of the houses of all the young girls in the area. Not surprised, Shinpei told him that the day would come when the police would learn that he was more of a Diddy than Diddy. During lunch, Junichi ate with Yukina and Ranko again, and as usual, Ranko made subtle threats which Yukina failed to understand. As they chatted, Nene suddenly ran towards them after searching everywhere for Junichi. She completely ignored the girls and tried to feed Junichi her cookies, but he politely declined them, so she licked his cheek because it had crumbs on it. Seeing this, Yukina got mad, and Junichi began praying that things wouldn't escalate. Then Ranko asked who Nene was. Her question forced him to visualize getting the crap beaten out of him by Ranko, who wanted to defend Yukina's honor. When he stopped having those wild thoughts, he attempted to introduce Nene to them, but Yukina recognized her just then. She politely spoke to Nene and introduced herself formally, but Nene felt insecure, so she asked Yukina to squat to her level. The next thing she did was push her melons against Yukina's own, just so she could prove that hers were bigger, and that foiled her with relief. To her surprise, Yukina didn't get mad. Instead, she commended her size, after which she called Ranko over to gaze upon Nene's magnificent plots. The three girls then began rubbing their chests against each other and watching them excited Junichi. He He went as far as telling himself that most of the world's wars could have been prevented if only they had witnessed the scene before him. As he kept fantasizing, Nene became uncomfortable that Ranko and Yukina seemed to enjoy their activity, which was why she stepped back, breaking the circle, and then accused Yukina of toying with Junichi. As far as she was concerned, the dumb Junichi was just a placeholder and a source of entertainment to Yukina. When she called him a bottom feeder, Junichi fell to his knees in mourning for his integrity. However, the girls ignored the theater kid, and Yukina asked Nene why she was putting Junichi down. Nene was shocked by her response, but recovered quickly and argued that she said what she said because she'd known Junichi the longest. Yukina didn't dispute this, but she did tell Nene that she was with Junichi because she liked him, and not because she wanted to play with him. She also claimed that he was a green flag, and said Nene could testify to it since she'd known him the longest. Hearing her speak about Junichi that way made Nene feel bad about her behavior, so she ran off. That night, Junichi continued his gal research, but wondered if Nene was doing okay. Eventually, he decided to catch some Z's, but suddenly felt something crawling up his body. To his surprise, the culprit was an undressed Nene, who desperately tried to get him to make plot with her. Junichi kept resisting, which set his cultured personality on a rampage because he wanted Junichi to get some. The calm one tried to intervene by reminding the sausage-brained idiot that Nene was like a sister to them, but he just laughed in his face. Seeing as he was entirely overcome by his desires, the calm one powered up and fought him. After vanquishing him, he joined the other two, who chanted that Yuka would be the first to make Junichi a man. Following this, Junichi rejected Nene and told her that the only person he wanted to do stuff with was Yukina. Nene cried after hearing this, decided to respect his wishes, so she got dressed and left. However, the following day, she came to his class and declared that she would become a better gal than Yukina so that she could steal him away. Later that week, when Junichi arrived in class, Shinpei welcomed him and then showed him a game chart in a magazine, which confused him. Seeing this, Shinpei asked how far he'd gone with Yukina, and Junichi shyly admitted that they had only hugged. Shinpei had expected his answer, so he told him that if they played the king game, he'd get a chance to kiss Yukina. All he had to do was convince his girl to agree to a get-together with her friends and them, and Junichi decided to do it. However, he was too much of a chicken to make the request, so he kept thinking about how to bring it up during lunch. Because of that, he didn't hear anything that Yukina said, and when she realized he wasn't paying attention, she got annoyed. After flicking his forehead, she repeated what she'd been saying, which was that she wanted to spend the summer doing something with him. In response, Junichi told her that he didn't mind what activity she picked as long as he got to spend time with her. Following this, he built up the courage to ask about the get-together, but suddenly remembered that he'd never been to her place. So he decided he would lead with that and asked if he could drop by her place after school. Yukina went quiet after hearing his question, which led him to assume it had annoyed her. To make things right, he quickly added that it wouldn't just be the two of them, as he was thinking of inviting their friends as well. After hearing this, Ranko's mood went from shy to annoyed in the blink of an eye, and Junichi became confused as to why. She agreed to text Ranko to see if she was game, and Junichi told her that she didn't have to decide if she didn't want to. Yukina assured him she was interested in the hangout, but the way she spoke made it clear she was pissed. Since Junichi was born stupid and dense, he didn't realize that she was mad, because he'd decided to invite people instead of just hanging out with her alone. After school, as Junichi waited by the gate for Yukina to come out, he tried to contain his excitement that they would be alone until the others arrived. He was in the middle of imagining how things would play out when Kashi walked out and saw him dancing like an idiot. Confused, she asked if he was okay, effectively bringing him back to reality, and he assured her that he was. She then asked why he hadn't left yet, and he answered that he was waiting for Yukina because they were having a get-together with their friends. At the mention of a get-together, Kashi told him she had nothing planned for the day, hinting that she wanted to be invited as well. When her method became too uncomfortable, Junichi stepped back and nervously asked if she wanted to come, to which she said yes. She then gave him her phone number and then asked him to text her Yukina's address because she was heading home to change first. As soon as she left, Yukina walked out, and when she noticed Junichi acting strange, she asked what he'd done. He sheepishly revealed that he'd invited Kashi to the hangout, and Yukina told him it was fine because the more the merrier. Just then, he received a text from Shinpei, which worried him, as it was apparent they were up to no good. Later, at Yukina's house, Junichi sat outside her bedroom door while she changed, but he soon became restless. So, because of that, he contemplated spying on her to get a preview of her banging body. After all, she told him before going inside that he was too much of a wimp to do it. Sadly, before he could go through with his peeping plan, Yukina opened the door and asked him to come inside. Once he walked into her room, he was left in awe by how clean it was, but Yukina told him to stop staring as it made her feel embarrassed. Junichi apologized and then sat down beside her, but his eyes started wandering up her body until they got to her chest area. Noticing his shameless gaze, Yukina scolded him, but changed her mind at the last minute to ask if he'd always liked plots. Instead of responding, he asked if her parents were home. When she told him they weren't, he soon realized why she'd been pissed that he wanted to invite their friends over. When he began spiraling over his missed clapping opportunity, he noticed Yukina coming onto him, so he decided to go along with her. Unfortunately, he never got to squeeze her stress ball because Ranko, Nini, and Kashi showed up at that moment. Yukina asked how they had gotten in, and Ranko admitted to stealing the spare key, after which she asked if they had interrupted something. Yukina said she'd only been teasing Junichi because she knew he didn't have the balls to suss her out. Hearing this, Nene grabbed his arm and nestled it between her plots, telling him he had a free pass to grab them whenever he wanted. Suddenly, he got kneed in the face by Kashi, who claimed it was an accident even though it obviously wasn't. Ranko then asked what she was doing there, and Kashi answered in her sickly sweet voice that it was normal for classmates to visit each other. A little while later, Junichi's friends arrived, and he was surprised to find them all dressed up. Shinpei was a low-budget Kirito, Keigo a try-hard gangster, and Minoru was just Minoru, a certified weirdo. Eventually, they all sat around the table, and Junichi did the honors of introducing his friends to the girls. Keigo and Shinpei tried to lay on the charm, but the girls weren't impressed, and Ranko suggested that they get on with the party. Without wasting time, Shinpei pulled out some sticks from his pocket and said he wanted to play the king game. The girls were skeptical about this and even asked if he was using it as an excuse to make them do cultured things. The boys swore that all their intentions were pure and convinced the girls to say yes to the game. However, when Junichi saw them snickering, he realized that things were about to go south. When the game began, it was very normal, just as Shinwei had promised. The girls got to give each other dares, some more daring than others, but they all seemed to be having fun. Somewhere along the line, Shinpei decided it was time to switch things up and told Junichi that it was time for him to get kissed. Junichi asked how he was sure he would get to kiss Yukana, so Shinpei revealed that he'd rigged the game and explained it to Junichi. He then handed the sticks to Junichi so that the girls wouldn't suspect anything, and after they picked, he ended up with the king stick. Proud that things were going accordingly, he ordered those with numbers 3 and 2 to French kiss, while the person with number 1 would kiss him. Unfortunately, all those numbers had been picked by the guys, and that was when he realized that Junichi had betrayed them. He had willingly given up his chance to kiss Yukana so that the girls wouldn't be forced to kiss Shinpei at all. As per the game rules, they had to go through with the king's order, so the girls cheered them on as they kissed. As Junichi lay unmoving on the floor, Yukana moved closer to him and thanked him for his sacrifice. Her words immediately cheered him up, but Nana decided to ruin the moment by inserting herself into the conversation. Yukana just laughed at her pettiness and suggested that they take a trip to the beach in the summer. Everyone liked her suggestion, but Junichi and Nene said they were broke and couldn't afford the trip. Yukana told them that the money issue could be solved by getting part-time jobs, and they agreed to do just that. Later that week, Junichi and his friends met and talked about how they couldn't wait to go on the trip. Each had their reasons for being hyped, but Minoru's reason was bound to get him locked up for life. Ignoring the degenerate creep, Junichi reminded them that they needed to save a lot of money if they wanted to enjoy the trip. Keigo didn't like that they had to get jobs, but Shinpei assured him that he'd gotten them the best gigs. He then pulled out his phone to show him a job placement at a manga shop, and Keigo didn't hate it. After all, he was an otaku, and Shinwei was sure the job was his calling. The job he picked out for Minoru was at a daycare center, even though he knew the boy was a risk to every young one there. As for Junichi, Shinpei picked out a cosplay cafe, and Junichi immediately tried to reject the job since he didn't want to dress up as a maid. Shinpei assured him he didn't have to, since the job opening was for a kitchen staff member, so he agreed to take it. On their first day at the manga shop, Keigo and Shinpei realized that it wasn't as easy as they thought it would be. On their way home that evening, they spotted Minoru at his job, and as they observed him, Shinpei wished he could gouge his eyes out. The next day, Junichi resumed work at the cosplay cafe and was surprised to see the girls working there as maids. At first, they assumed he was a customer, but he explained that he was part of the kitchen staff. Just then, their shady-looking manager walked in, and the way he looked at the girls made them uncomfortable, especially Kashi. However, he treated Junichi as if he didn't even exist and told him to get to work. When the cafe opened later, the girls did their best to serve the customers even though most of their requests sounded inappropriate. Kashi even fell while rushing over to attend to a customer, and the guy shamelessly ogled her. Later that day, a customer purposely spilled his water and tried to make Ranko pat his pants dry, but the girl showed him that she wasn't one to be messed with. A few days later, Shinpei cracked the code of being an excellent employee to the point where Keigo got jealous of him. Meanwhile, Junichi arrived at the cafe for his shift and accidentally walked in on Kashi changing clothes. Without a second thought, she warmed his cheek for him, not giving him the chance to explain that it was an accident. When Yukina saw him later, she asked why he'd peeped on Kashi, so he explained that he hadn't known she was in the room. Kashi refused to believe it was an accident, adding that he was no different from their slime bag manager. Another day at the cafe, the air conditioning in the break room broke down, so Yukina kept complaining about how hot it was. When she saw that Junichi had a bottle of juice, she immediately grabbed it and drank out of the bottle before he could stop her. When she returned the bottle, all Junichi could think about was the fact that they had indirectly kissed since he drank from the bottle first. However, something possessed him to take another sip, but before he could do it, Ranko barged into the room, startling him. As a result, he dropped the bottle and Ranko accidentally stepped on it, so she apologized. Meanwhile, at the manga shop, the manager announced that Shinpei was the new assistant manager. Since he liked to show off, Shinpei immediately began issuing orders and promised his coworkers that, with him in charge, their sales would triple. To Keigo, it sounded like Shinpei was plotting something, but he couldn't figure out what it was. With barely 3 weeks left for their planned trip, They all continued putting their best into their jobs. The night before Junichi's last day, he collapsed on his bed in exhaustion, and as he lay there, he remembered that the cafe was doing a special event the next day. Eventually, he fell asleep still wondering which costume the manager would make the girls wear. When he got to work the next day, Yukana, who was dressed as a version of Sailor Moon, informed him that the special event was called Book Girl Day. All they had to do was read books to the customers, and she wanted him to pick a book for her. Just then, the other girls arrived wearing similar costumes, and when they heard that Yukana had asked Junichi to choose a book, they agreed, because she was the only one who wasn't interested. So she grabbed one of the books and began reading it. It didn't take long for her to realize that the books were spicier than your love lives, so she stormed off to give the manager a piece of her mind. The others didn't understand why she was mad, so Neni picked another book and unwrapped it so she could read the name. She did this for a few others, and Junichi confirmed that none of those books were appropriate in any way, but Nini ignored him and started reading one. She was so good with the voiceover that Junichi started getting excited. Seeing this, Ranko joined in the fun and cranked up the teasing. Not wanting to be left out, Yukina also picked up a book, and while Ranko only got mesmerized by her voice, Junichi almost creamed his pants. Unable to take it anymore, he slammed his hands on the table, demanding that she stop. The manager walked in at that moment, so Junichi confronted him over his dirty book choices. He said he was trying to exploit the girls' innocence by making them read such filth, but the man disagreed. He told Junichi that he was only doing what the customers wanted, and that there was nothing wrong with that. He was still defending his decision when Kashi returned and handed him a telephone, saying the owner wanted to speak with him. After getting off the phone, the manager announced that the event had been cancelled. As he began walking out, Kashai asked if they would still receive the bonuses they were promised, and he assured her that they would. After he stormed off, Junichi, Yukana, and Ranko praised Kashi for foiling the manager's cultured plans. However, their words went over Nene's head, who was too dumb to understand what they were talking about. After work, Junichi walked home with Yukana, and she told him he looked cool for standing up to the manager. As they talked more, he asked what other jobs she'd be interested in. She also added that she wouldn't mind being a hostess at a karaoke place, as long as he also worked there. Moving on from the topic of jobs, Junichi said he couldn't wait to have fun with everyone at the beach. Yukina told him that she also felt the same way, but added that she'd like to go on a solo trio with him another time. This pleased Junichi more than anything, so he didn't say no. A few days later, they all met at the station with their things parked and ready for a fun-filled day at the beach. When they arrived, the boys were beyond hyped, and Keigo even cried because everywhere he looked, they were a baddie in a bikini. When Ranko came out in her swimsuit, he and Shinpei felt like they were in heaven. They also gave Kashi and Nene scores when they showed up, but Nene was more interested in Junichi. As she rubbed her barely covered plots against Junichi, Yukina arrived and stole his breath away. Following this, Junichi set up their beach umbrellas, but Keigo and Shinpei were more interested in watching Nene stretch. Later, after Junichi set up Kashi's umbrella and lounge chair, she tried to ask him to bring her some juice, but the others called him to splash around in the water. While they were doing that, Nene suddenly jumped on Junichi's back, and even though he liked the feel of her floaties on his back, he told her to get off. Of course, she refused because she had ulterior motives, so the jealous Kashai squirted water on her using a water gun. Meanwhile, Shinpei, Kaigo, and Minoru were sitting on the beach, watching and filming every girl who walked by. Well, Shinpei and Keigo were. As for Minoru, his interests lay in more undeveloped things. Later, as Junichi and the girls played volleyball, Ranko hit the ball so hard in Junichi's direction that he fell into the water. Yukina became worried, but Junichi assured her that he was fine, so Ranko gave him an insincere apology. Following this, she suggested to Yukina that they take a look around, and she agreed because she also wanted to get items for dinner. After the girls walked away, Nene asked Junichi to build a sandcastle with her, and he agreed, even though Kashi said they were too old to be doing that. In the end, she joined them to build the castle, and while they planned to make it bigger, Junichi noticed two guys talking to Yukana and Ranko. He began walking towards them, but slowed down midway when he realized he was acting like an insecure beta male. As he stood watching then, Yukons noticed him and immediately broke away to go to his side. Ranko followed almost immediately, and after taking one arm each, they thanked him for saving them from those annoying farm tools. Being sandwiched between two perfect sets of globes made Junichi feel like he was on cloud 9 as he walked them to their umbrella. When they got there, they thanked Shinue and Keigo for watching their stuff and told them that they could have some fun now that they were back. The boys didn't like this idea, but because they couldn't argue with the girls, they walked away looking all depressed. They ensured to take Minoru with them. With the boys gone, Yukina handed Junichi a bottle of sunscreen and asked him to apply some to her, and he got hyped. Ranko then took off her own and made the same request, causing Junichi to feel like Christmas had come early because he knew he would get to touch plots. Not wanting to be left behind, Yukina also took off her top, and as expected, the homeboy went nuts. When he began rubbing their backs simultaneously, the girls started making suggestive sounds, and Ranky took it up a notch by talking dirty. Meanwhile, Shinpei and Keigo grew tired of dragging pre-production Majin Buu around, so they stopped walking. After catching their breath, Shinlei told Keigo that he had a master plan. However, unless they convinced Junichi the Simp Lord, it wouldn't work. Later, while they were having dinner, they spoke to Junichi about their grand plan. So at night, the moment the girls left for the bath, Shinpei pulled out a box of high-tech spy gadgets and gave it to Junichi and Keigo. Junichi felt what they wanted to do was wrong, but Shinpei and Keigo were already suited up, and they told him his priorities were misplaced. As far as Shinpei was concerned, peeping on girls in the bath was a rite of passage, and anyone who refused was a failure. When they asked if he didn't want to see what Yukana looked like in her birthday suit, he admitted that he did. Still, he argued that the way they wanted to go about it was wrong and would put them in trouble. While they argued about this, Minoru informed them that he was going to the bath to watch fathers bond with their offspring. However, this made them pause and stare at him until he left the room. Meanwhile, the girls were already at the outdoor bath, and when Kashi saw Ranko standing by the railing, she told her that someone might see her. Ranko said that wouldn't happen because the security around the bath was top-notch, so that no peeper could get close. Her words encouraged the others to come and stand beside her, as they all enjoyed the view together. A little while later, they got in the water, and Ranko made it her duty to do plot examinations on Yukana. She eventually moved on to Nene, and Yukana joined her because they were two peas in a pod. Watching them made Kashi jealous, given her lack of plot, so she turned away, only for Yukana to sneak up behind her and grope her. Kashi managed to get away, but Yukana told her to let loose a little and join them to have fun, so she grabbed her plots. At that time, the peeping squaring was making their way through the woods surrounding the inn to get to the open bath. Using his night vision goggles, Shinpei located a booby trap set by the innkeeper, so he instructed his friends to step over it. Keigo did as he was told, but Junichi pretended not to see it and set it off. He then feigned regret and suggested that they leave before the innkeeper showed up. Shinpei said there was no need. To Junichi's surprise, he revealed that he was the one who set up the sense so that he could test Junichi's loyalty. Unfortunately, Junichi had failed, proving that he wasn't the type to put bros over hoes, so they opened fire on him. Junichi ran for his life even though they weren't using real bullets, and they kept chasing him until he eventually fell off a cliff. Trusting that Junichi had solid plot armor, Shinpei told Keigo that they didn't need to search for him, so they returned to the mission at hand. As they neared the women's bath, they became hyped for what they were about to see. But the next moment, Keigo fell into a pit. Fortunately, he grabbed hold of the edge and was pulled out by Shinpei before he could meet his maker. Just then, Shinpei set off another trap and almost got riddled with arrows, but he refused to back down and convinced Keigo that they had to keep going. They dodged trap after trap like they were on Ninja Warrior, but in the end, they lost. Shinpei was hit with suction cup arrows and dramatically told Keigo to finish the mission alone. Keigo tried but accidentally stepped on a landmine, which set off fireworks. The girls enjoyed the fireworks show from the bathhouse, and after that, they went down to the beach. Junichi woke up in Yukana's lap a little while later and was shocked to see that he was still alive. Yukana explained that they had found him there when they came to light fireworks, and he realized that he'd washed up there after falling from the cliff. He then asked about Shinpei and Keigo, so Yukana told him that the innkeeper had taken them to their room after he found them unconscious in the forest. Embarrassed, Junichi apologized on their behalf, and she accepted the apology by clicking his forehead. He then sat beside her, and as they watched the girls do their thing, Yukana admitted that the trip had been fun, even though it was different from what she had pictured. Junichi didn't like this, so he suggested that they return alone another time, and she agreed. As they talked some more, they made plans to go on a date when they returned home, and Junichi suggested an amusement park. The following day, when they returned to the city, Junichi and Yukana were walking home when they ran into Yukana's old classmate, Dai. Yukana happily chatted away with the guy while Junichi slowly faded into the background. He couldn't even be annoyed that he was being ignored because all he could think of was how perfect they looked together. Eventually, Dai remembered him, so he asked Yukana who he was, and she proudly introduced him as her boyfriend. Junichi felt intimidated by Dai's stare, but he still managed to form proper sentences as he spoke to the guy. Dai congratulated Yukana for getting a nice guy as her boyfriend, but still teased her a bit, so she told him they needed to go. As they walked, Yukana talked about how fun their trip was, but Junichi was stuck in his head, trying to figure out what her relationship with Dai had been. He went so far as to imagine them together and got so jealous that he started banging his head against a pole to get rid of the images. His behavior worried Yukana, so she asked what the problem was, and he said he was only trying to get rid of evil thoughts, not trusting that he wouldn't do it again. Yukana linked their arms and asked him to tell her what was really troubling him. Junichi told her he'd just been thinking about how perfect Dai looked, from his clothes to his face and hair. When he finished speaking, Yukana asked if he was jealous, and he admitted he was, adding that he was nothing compared to Dai. He also revealed that he thought she looked good with Dai and had been embarrassed to introduce them as a couple. Hearing this, Yukana let go of him to ask if he really believed that, and he said yes. His answer annoyed her, so she left him standing at the side of the road and said she was going home. Not surprisingly, Junichi didn't try to chase her, as he was utterly clueless as to why she was even angry. That night, he watched Boa's livestream, and she talked about the trip she'd taken with her friends. The things she mentioned sound oddly familiar to Junichi, but he brushed them off as merely coincidental. The following week at school, while the three idiots talked excitedly about their just concluded trip, they noticed Junichi being all depressed. Concerned, they asked him to explain the issue, so he told them about Dai and how Yukina was mad at him. When he finished his story, Shinpei shed a few tears, but the boys agreed that Dai was bad news. Minoru suggested that he break up with Yukina before his fears were confirmed, but Shinpai cut him off. He told Junichi that he was sure Dai was packing, and that if Yukina got a taste of it, she would never want Junichi's sausage again. Junichi asked how that was relevant to the discussion, and Shinpai assured him that it was. Just then, Yukina walked into the classroom, but she ignored them and went to speak to her friends, so Shinpai told Junichi that the clock was ticking on his relationship. For the rest of the day, Junichi tried to get Yukina's attention, but she kept ignoring him. When school was finally over, he followed her to her locker and almost chickened out, but still pushed through. He asked if she'd like to walk home together, and she said no, explaining that she was going to hang out with her old classmates. After she walked out, he fell to his knees in despair, and his friends came to him, laughing behind his back. Eventually, they took him to a karaoke bar, and while they sang their heart out, he just sat in a chair looking lost. Tired of watching him be pitiful, Shinpai sat beside him and encouraged him to forget about Yukina. At the mention of her name, Junichi mindlessly walked to the television and hugged it, so Shinpai punched him to bring him back to his senses. He then grabbed his shoulders and told him that the next day at school, he should find Yukina and beg her to take him back. Junichi asked why he'd do that when he didn't know what he'd done to offend her, and Shinpai told him that a desperate man didn't need reasons to beg. Still, Junichi didn't think so, but Shinpai assured him it would because girls secretly loved guys who were simps. Believing his words, Junichi felt much better and joined the boys in singing until they grew tired. On their way out of the karaoke place later, Junichi was unfortunate to spot Yukina in a restaurant with Dai. The way she spoke and smiled with Dai convinced Junichi that she liked the guy, so he turned to dust and was blown away. The next day, as he walked to school alone, Junichi recalled how happy Yukina had been while talking to Dai. Since he'd come to his own conclusion about their relationship, he wondered if things between him and Yukina were over. He also asked if she'd played him for a fool from the start, even though he had been the one to approach her for stupid reasons. These thoughts made him sad, so he started crying, and just as he wiped the tears away, Yukina showed up. Surprisingly, she spoke to him as if they hadn't been on bad terms, and admitted she might have overreacted a bit. Explanation just annoyed Junichi, so he demanded to know why she'd been alone with Dia when she told him she was meeting her old classmates. Yukina told him their other classmates had left early, and she had only stayed back to talk to Dai because he had something to tell her. Junichi didn't believe what she said, so like anyone who had been hurt by love, he accused her of cheating on him. Instead of trying to defend herself, Yukina just stared at him, and since he couldn't stand it, ran off like a coward. When she finally arrived at school, his friends and Kashi immediately noticed that something was wrong, which was why Kashi approached Junichi after school and asked him for a few minutes of his time. They went to the roof for privacy, and while there, she wondered what had happened between him and Yukina. He admitted that he didn't think Yukina liked him and said that she had only been toying with him. When he mentioned that his experience with her had taught him a valuable lesson, Kashi became annoyed. She expressed her disappointment at knowing that he was no different from the other guys who never stopped to think about how their significant others felt. Refusing to stop there, she said Yukina was the victim in everything that happened and stormed off after telling him he wasn't worthy to be her servant. And as he walked home later, Nene came out of nowhere and jumped on his back. She asked why he was sulking, and he assured her he wasn't, but Nene could read him like a book and insisted he talk. Eventually, Junichi opened up to her, and after hearing everything he had to say, she told him the issue wasn't something he should worry about. She also said that if he didn't fix things with Yukina, he would have no choice but to marry her. Her statement didn't make sense to him, but Nene refused to explain it and then rushed off. As he watched her go, he suddenly recalled the past when he told her that if he grew up and couldn't bag a girl, he would marry her. That night, as he watched Boa's stream, he had flashbacks of his conversations with Kashi, Nene, and Yukina. Not wanting to dwell on them, he returned his attention to the video where Boa was talking about the guy she used to like. She told her viewers everything about him, but said he'd been acting like an idiot lately and she wished things could go back to the way they were. She also cried a bit and said some other irrelevant stuff, but Junichi still had no idea she was talking about him. Meanwhile, Yukina sent a message to the group chat she had with the girls, asking them to meet her the next day. When they all met, she broke into tears, which annoyed Ranko, so she stormed off to find Junichi. At that time, Junichi was with his friends in another cafe, talking to them about his problem. However, Ranko found him and tried to beat the daylight out of him because of Yukina. Before she could do so, he admitted that he knew he wasn't worthy of Yukina, but he was selfish and didn't want to see her with anyone else. Seeing his honesty and vulnerability, Ranko let go of him. After she sat down, she asked what his plan was. Just then, Dai walked in with his friends, and after they took their seats, Junichi's group heard them talking about Yukina. Dai claimed that Yukina was easy and promised his bros that he'd pass her along to them once he was done eating her cookie. Annoyed, Ranko attempted to approach him, but Junichi stopped her and went himself. When Dai saw him, he realized that Junichi had heard what he said, but when Junichi demanded that he take them back, he refused. He kept insisting that Yukina was a plot addict and would remain one, whether Junichi liked it or not. Annoyed, Junichi said he'd be crazy to let Yukina end up with someone like Dai, and that was when Dai realized he was a virgin. He told Junichi that it made sense that Yukina would want to get with someone else, and that pissed Junichi off. He grabbed Dai's shirt and told him that he could talk crap about him all he wanted, but said he wasn't worthy of even speaking Yukon's name. As a chill guy, Dai removed Junichi's hand and told him that it would be better if they settled things outside like real men. Unfortunately for Junichi, Dai had zero honor, so he and his friends cornered Junichi outside. Junichi was the one who threw the first punch, but Dai dodged it and kneed him in the stomach. He then began mocking Junichi, saying a girl would have been able to land a hit. However, he got so cocky and stopped paying attention, so Junichi tackled him to the ground and bit his leg. Shocked and in pain, Dai began screaming, so his friends started kicking Junichi to force him to let go of Dai. Junichi held on tight even though he was getting hurt and told Dai that he would only let go of him if he promised never to approach Yukana again. Desperate, Dai gave his word, but the moment Junichi let go of him, he kicked him and called him a fool for believing his words. He kicked Junichi over and over again, and as he did, he talked about how he would use Yukana and dump her when he got tired. As Junichi lay on the ground in pain, Dai and his gang laughed at him, but refused to let them get away with the things they said. Just as he was about to force himself to get up, one of the guys cried out in pain, drawing everyone's attention to him. It so happened that Ranko had knocked him about for a bit, and after she commended Junichi for having balls, she faced Dai and his friends. After she took down 2 more guys, the others refused to go near her, so she approached Dai. The guy was scared, but since he was a pro at Talk No Jutsu, he tried smoothing things over with her. Unfortunately, he couldn't stop himself from staring at her hot body, and like any guy who only used his sausage more than his brain, he asked if she was down to play with him. Ranko turned him down, saying she didn't do wimps, so he asked his boys to teach her a lesson. Before they could move, Shinpei knocked a guy unconscious using a fire extinguisher and told Dai that guys who hit women were the worst kind of scum. At that point, Dai had had enough of losers trying to play heroes, but the boys ignored what he was saying to talk to Junichi. Once they confirmed he was only slightly bruised, they told him to take his pathetic self to Yukina and grovel like his life depended on it. They promised to keep Dai and his group busy, so Junichi thanked them and rushed off. Dai attempted to chase after him, but Ranko blocked his path, saying it wasn't nice for the host to leave the party first. Annoyed, Dai ordered his friends to attack Ranko and Junichi's friends, and they did just that. Meanwhile, as Junichi ran to God knows where, he called Yukana, but she refused to pick up, so he sent a text, asking her to meet him behind the school. At the cafe, Nine and Kashai decide to plead Junichi's case to Yukina, hoping to help her understand that he liked her even though he was dumb. When she continued being skeptical, Kashi asked if Junichi had ever told her how he felt about her. Yukina said he had, but admitted she wasn't sure he meant it, so Kashi advised her to ask him again to be sure. Yukina thanked her for the advice, but said she also had to think it over because her feelings were all mixed up. Following this, she left the cafe. So Kashi asked Nene if they had done the right thing by helping their love rival. Nene admitted that she didn't know, but their smiles said otherwise. Back in the parking lot, Ranko and the boys had taken down Dai's friend, so Dai pleaded with them to spare him. Ranko told him that he did not deserve to be set free, and just as she was about to clobber him, a young girl showed up. Noticing that their attention was on her, Dai made a run for it, knocking the girl down in the process. When she started crying, Minoru comforted her, and just as he reunited her with her mother, that idiot Dai called out to them, saying they were foolish. Ignoring him, the girl thanked Minoru for helping her, and after she left with her mom, Minoru went full Bruce Banner. When he went after Dai, the boy screamed and tried to get away, but Minoru wouldn't let him. He would have torn him to pieces if Shinpei and Keigo hadn't caught him. As they tried to calm their friend down, Ranko pulled Dai to the side, so he started begging again. Ranko told him it wouldn't work, then kicked him in the crown jewels, sending him crashing to the ground in pain. She then stomped on him as she gave him a lecture on what being a real man was all about. Once she was sure her words had sunk in, she asked the boys to let Minoru loose, and they did. Meanwhile, Junichi was at school waiting for Yukina to show up when he received a photo from the boys. Seeing that they were fine, he felt relieved, though not wholly since Yukina was yet to show up. As he continued waiting for her, he thought about the time they spent together and realized that it had been the best part of the year. Just as he started getting emotional, Yukina arrived, so he got on all fours and begged her to be his girlfriend. Yukina didn't seem to think he was serious, but he assured her that he was, and proceeded to be honest with her. He admitted that for the past few days he had been thinking only about himself, which was wrong because they were a couple. He also revealed that the first time he asked her out, he was looking to get laid. However, he had now fallen for her and wanted to start over. Curious, she asked what made him fall for her, so he told her everything, from the little things to the big ones. His honesty moved her, so she asked him to get up and told him he didn't need to ask her out again, because they were already dating. With things between them patched up, Yukana invited him to go somewhere with her, and he agreed. However, they went home to change clothes, and when they met later, Junichi recognized the shirt she wore as the one he had picked out at the mall. After he complimented her, they left for their date, and he was surprised when they arrived at the amusement park. They first went on different rides, after which Yukina insisted on taking photos, and rushed to the photo booths while Junichi was busy looking around. When he realized she was gone, he went looking for her and mistakenly walked in on a couple making out in one of the booths. Embarrassed, he stepped back and apologized for invading their privacy, but he didn't move from there. As he began to imagine taking a kissing photo with Yukana, she suddenly appeared behind him, which shocked him. After he calmed down, she pulled him into another booth and tricked him into thinking they were going to take a kissing picture. Later on, as they admired the city's night view, Yukana told him that as much as she liked hanging out with their friends, she would pick a date with him over a group hangout any day. They continued talking for a while, and when it was time for them to say goodbye, Yukina shocked Junichi by kissing him and then running away. She only stopped when she knew he couldn't see her, and as she caught her breath, she held her lips in awe of what she'd done. The following day, as Junichi walked to school, he met Kashai and thanked her for what she'd said to him on the roof because they helped him figure stuff out. Kashi told him it was her pleasure, and as they continued walking, he suddenly asked if she ever did live streams. Before she could lie her way out of it, Nene joined them. As she began teasing Junichi as usual, Yukina suddenly appeared and greeted them awkwardly. This made the girls suspicious, but before they could start grilling the couple, Yukina grabbed Junichi's hand and ran to school. If Junichi hadn't ended up with Yukina, which of the girls do you think would have been a perfect fit? If you've watched up to this point and liked this video, comment simp. Also, check out the next video.